go first. Okay, back table.
Yes.
You guys had physician?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about your competency and your 3 questions.
Competency, managing conflict.
Oh, okay, good one. Managing conflict.
And the 3 questions would be, describe a situation in which you have a demanding patient that wants something that's just not indicated,
Okay,
or that you don't agree with, and what did you do?
perfect.
So patient's number 1. Number 2, describe a situation you may disagree with the recommendations of a specialist that you've referred a patient to.
Okay,
Number 3, tell us if you've ever had a problem with scheduling, where you don't feel scheduling.
Okay,
And how did you handle it?
beautiful, beautiful. Good, good. Back here. Who's going?
We're still writing.
Okay, I'll come up here. I'm coming back to you.
We are 3 competencies for wellness coordinator. We're empathy, skills and motivational interviewing, and then recognizing the need to refer.
Okay, so you picked 3 competencies. Okay, what are your questions?
You guys read along.
For empathy, we have you ever coached someone who had a situation in which you couldn't relate to? How did you handle that?
Okay, good.
Motivational interviewing, have you had a difficult client who was resistant to change? What techniques did you use to help and how did it work?
Okay,
And then knowing when to refer, have you been in a situation in which you were coaching someone and identified additional needs that you couldn't provide? How did you handle that?
okay, okay, good, good. And it's good to think about, some good answers too, like, think ahead to what are you trying to ascertain from that answer and what would be a good answer and kind of a bad answer or whatever too. So, good, very good. Back table, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we did 3 different competencies.
And what was your position again? Clinic supervisor, yes. Okay.
So the first one we asked was competency was working under pressure.
Okay, working under pressure, that never happens.
We said, tell me about a time that you had 2 priorities that competed for your time. And
Okay.
what were the priorities and how did you resolve the conflict?
Very good.
The second one was conflict management.
Okay.
We said, describe a situation when you had a patient who was upset and tell me what you did to resolve the situation.
Good.
I can't remember what was the question.
Well, that was ability to learn, yeah.
Last one we said ability to learn new things. We said, tell me about a time that you realized you needed additional information regarding a situation. How did you gather the information and what did you learn?
Very good. Excellent. Very good. So this isn't that hard, right? You just have to do some pre-planning. This table?
Should we do MA position?
You had the what?
MA
Medical
position.
assistant, okay?
So tell me about a time when you had so these are technical skills for phlebotomy.
Technical skills for phlebotomy,
Tell
okay?
me about a time when you had a difficult patient sick or were unable to get the patient sick. What did you do and what was the results of that?
Yep, because we've had our fair share of flops on hiring on phlebotomy, right? That's a good one to focus on.
Problem solving was the next one. Tell me about a time when there was a mechanical failure, either EKG machine, EMR. How did you handle this and what was the outcome?
Okay,
And then lastly was conflict management, I guess.
Okay.
Tell me about a time when you were caring for a difficult or anxious patient. How did you help put them at ease and what was the results?
very good, very
Then
good.
how old are you and how many patients have you?
We're gonna talk about that next, no.
How did it get here?
Yeah, we will, don't worry, it's coming, you guys, we'll talk about that. So, just one more thing about these questions. So Erica has done, I think, a fantastic job in pulling some example questions for you onto this website that we're gonna be publishing very quickly. But look through them. I'm sure, Erica, you'd be more than happy to get feedback if you could think of some additional questions that you'd like to ask or that we can incorporate into the standard list of questions, right? Send them her way, because we can always enhance these. I was the manager of talent acquisition before I joined Quad Med, and so I had to hire a lot of recruiters, and so over the years, I just kept honing my questions until I got really good ones. So sometimes it takes practice, and you'll have a question that just completely flops, and that's okay, then try a different one. Rachel?
When I went through my interviewing process here, it was through on the QG side. I was hired to work in IT for Quad Graphics before I got moved over and the new offer letter for Quad Med. And so I went through the interviewing process with Tim Schlitz and the IT director over there and a couple of the department managers. And Tim asked me some strange questions, and I remember two of them, and so I just thought I'd share them because they're not job related, but I think they were interesting. Like, anyway, you can tell me what you think. The first question that he asked me was, do you prefer to get up in the morning or go to bed at night? That was one question he asked me.
Prefer to get up in the morning or go to bed at night.
All right, that was a nice close-ended question. Next.
And then the second question that he asked me was, did you get through school because you worked hard or because you were smart? And so I thought they were interesting, and they're not job related, but I think, and they're closed-ended questions, but I thought that they helped. Now looking back on it, I think he asked me those questions to help him understand how honest I could be and how
You could think
how
of your
excited I should
It's
be
more,
about,
it's a more thinking on your
working
feet
thing, yes.
situation. Tim interviews a lot of college grads, to-be college grads. And he has some interesting philosophies around it, and you know, they hire a lot of people, and they have a great conversion rate. I mean, they have 21 interns graduating in May. They keep about 85% of them.
Yeah.
So he's really more, they are really big at the college campuses, and I think he's looking for thinking.
I do think IT does a lot of things right on the QG side because they
They do.
I mean, up to the Tim Schlitz level,
Yes.
I mean, they interview every single
They
intern.
are
I mean,
very involved.
that usually doesn't happen, that
Yeah.
somebody at the VP level is interviewing every intern coming into IT, but he knows how important hiring the right people is in his success, and so he, puts time there and invests.
And then I believe in behavioral-based questions, and they do a great job of that. And it was like I had three rounds in that one interview. But those are the questions that stood out to me.
Right.
As
good questions,
as questions that he's really looking for something in me.
Yeah,
And
he
not
wants
just
to know me.
my skill set
Right.
that I can bring to the table.
How
So
did
I
you-
thought they were interesting.
How did you feel, Rachel, as a candidate in the IT? I mean, did you feel that you were treated special? That you were important to them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, being able to talk to Tim Schlitz, looking back on it again now, I didn't know who Tim Schlitz was. Honestly, I had no idea what Quad Graphics was when I walked into the lobby. I had to Google it before I got there. And go on the website. He asked me, what do you know about the company? I said, well,
You're like, true.
all I know is what's on your website. I don't really know anything else. Yeah, I think being able to talk to someone at that level is
Right.
a huge indicator of the pride that they take in the people that they hire. And they want you to get experience talking to these people because they want you to grow and become one of these people. So I think that was
Yep.
just
Ask you, because I think it's an area at Quad that does it right and does it really well. Yeah, David.
Just a quick show of hands. Who enjoys performing interviews?
Giving them or?
Yes. No, really, interviewing people. Interesting.
Daniel?
I have a question that I asked someone started a candidate that I've interviewed, and that is, tell me what characteristics or attributes you want a manager that you work for to possess.
Yeah.
And I can't say how many people have thanked me for asking that question.
Yeah.
But it also gives me an indication of how we would be working together.
Yeah, I asked a similar question at the end of mine. I'd say, okay, now you've heard me talk about the job, I've heard about you. Tell me, on kind of a scale of 1 to 10, tell me how interested you are in the position. And then I also want to hear about, I'm sure you've learned things about yourself, like what drives your engagement and do you think that this position would do that?
I think that's interesting because with what Rachel said and who she was interviewing with, I think people in those positions can give a unique opportunity to see the vision of the organization. And and that either gets a candidate super excited.
Yep.
Because they share that vision.
Yep.
You know, if they're smart, they're actually thinking, oh my
Right.
goodness, I have the opportunity.
Right,
and
right,
mobility
right.
in this organization.
Yep.
So on that point, I mean, it's come up a lot in interviews that, you know, kind of people leave jobs because they leave leaders.
Right.
And I've gotten hints of like dissatisfaction with leaders and stuff like that. So I know you're gonna get into questions that you can and can't ask, but, you know, when you have someone say specifically, I'm leaving this job because of management, how can you divulge more information from that of,
Right.
the theme seems to be that people feel more micromanaged and they
Okay.
just want to get away from it. But
Yep.
I guess it seems like when they say that information, it's a really good opportunity to get more.
Right.
And I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know how.
Because you want to find out, is it them or is it the place, right? Because if it's them, then probably they're not going to be happy here either.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of, I guess I go back to behavioral-based interviewing. Tell me specifically what's happened. I really want to understand, you know, because I want you to be happy here. So, you know, tell me specifically some good examples of what's happened that's made you feel that way. You know.
That's funny because when I was hired, they asked me that question. Because that's why I was leaving hired.
Okay.
I
Did
was
they
asked
ask you something like
They
that?
did. They
Okay.
said, tell me, it was Tim. He said why, what was the question? I can't remember the exact question, but it came down to, yes, I was leaving my old job because the management style,
Yep.
I didn't agree with the management style,
Sure.
that's what it was. And then he said, okay, what was the management style?
And ask it
And,
more
yeah.
specifically. And the other thing you want to do, I like to ask too, because every place has its problems, no place is perfect. So I also want to hear, like, if you disagreed with management, what did you do about it? You know, because we don't want people that just like flat, you know, run out of here in the face of their first problem, right?
Right.
We need people that can effectively work through it.
I used to ask, before I came to Quad, in a different role, a question I thought had a lot of facets to it that you could learn a lot of information from. And it was just simply, what one word best describes you and why?
Okay.
And one of the things you don't think about with that question is you get a really good sense of their active listening skills.
Yeah.
Because people have a tendency, rather than answering the question, what one word, they tend to say, well, I'm outgoing and I'm personal.
Sure.
And so that'll let you know, number one, are they
Yep.
actively listening?
Yep.
And then you learn a lot about the person as well.
Right. If you like psychology, interviewing should be your thing. Okay, I'm going to skip through a few of these. I put these in your notes because they're the summary from the video, so just so you have them as a reference, so I'm not going to go through them again. But I do want to talk about, because we have had some issues, and I'm going to have Tom and Erica elaborate if you can think of some more specific examples. But we have had some situations at Quad Med where individuals interviewing have asked unlawful questions. I don't think they intend to, but because they don't know. And so that's why we're providing this training. And so basically, like the video talked about, what helps to make sure that you're not asking unlawful questions is to stick to questions about the job. If you stick to questions about the job, you really shouldn't have any problems, okay? So let's just kind of go through here as just kind of a quiz. Do you think you can ask, are you married?
No.
Right. Does it have anything to do with the job?
Well, is it illegal? Is that
It's
protected?
illegal. Yeah. Yes. You didn't know that?
Well, you know, I immediately think of all the EEOC classes of discriminating. I mean, I can't imagine why you want to, but I think of the discriminating classes, and that
Right.
doesn't. But there must be a whole set of other areas that I don't know about that you can't answer.
Yeah. It can venture into that though. I'm married. I have kids. You know, the point is that I don't know if it's illegal, but
Okay.
it ventures into territory we don't want to venture into.
Exactly. So it may not be. At a minimum, it's unwise.
But what if the person being interviewed brings it up? Are you allowed to delve in then?
If the person, yeah, that's a great question. So the person in the interview brings up something that you know is a no-no, I just quickly change topics. No, you don't want to ask more follow-up questions.
Change the topic
Yep.
and put your pen down, do not
Right.
document that.
Right, exactly. Don't put that in your notes.
Two kids.
Right, exactly. That would be what not to do.
Distracted.
Right, exactly. What about where you were born?
No.
No, why?
What does it pertain to the job?
Doesn't pertain to the job, right? Exactly, and it can get into, you know, more of their ethnicity potentially too, so you just want to stay away from it. Where do you live? Can you ask that? Sure. You can ask it, but we've had a few situations where we have to be careful in how it's asked too. You know, we can say, oh, where do you live? But what we can't do is, like, if the person says, I live, you know, I'm here in Sussex and I live in Green Bay, or I live in Madison, for example. Okay, well, if they live in Madison and they're here interviewing, then they probably decided that they're gonna either commute or figure out, you know, a way to get here. We can't use that as a way to discriminate against them in getting the job. Or you can say, okay, so you live in Madison, and so, you know, so you're gonna commute here? Yep, okay. We really can't just, that can't be the reason that we disqualify somebody, just because they live an hour away.
So what you really want to do, and I wouldn't even phrase it that way, I would say the hours of the position are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is that something you can be flexible with? Because then that eliminates, okay, I gotta catch 2 buses and 3 trains and whatever, and then you're sitting there fretting, oh geez, Erica's not gonna get there because it's a snow day. I applied for the job, I know where the job is located, I know that I need to be there on time. It's up to me to do that.
Stick back to the job.
Yes.
Sherry, you've had a lot of
I
experience with
actually follow up on that, especially with people who are in a long commute, and I may be concerned or have concerns in the back of my mind on, are they taking 2 buses and trains, will they get there on time? I follow it up by just saying, how many times in a 90-day period do you feel it's acceptable to be tardy to work?
Yep.
And you'll find out a lot of people, you'll think, oh, everybody will say, oh, never. No, they don't say that. They'll say, well, it depends on the weather, and if my car breaks down, and this and that, and then you can get a better sense of whether or not, and then that will qualify it a little bit.
Yeah, and then you can follow that up with, what do you do in the event that you are being
Correct.
tardy? And they
Yeah.
say, oh, I just get there, you know, within 30 minutes. No, you need to call ahead.
Yeah, I know.
I've experienced this with this new clinic in New York, because it's not an easy commute into New York, and some people come in from New York, it's an hour and a half on the trains to get in there. And maybe I handled this wrong, but I did ask, well, Jennifer and some of the other people, you know, what's your commute time into the city? And I did ask that question. I mean, and I always say, do you feel comfortable, you know, taking, I mean, some people literally were in Long Island. It takes them, you know, it's 3 hours of travel a day. And, you know, Jennifer had already been working in New York. For her, it wasn't a big deal, and it wasn't a disqualifier for anyone, but you can definitely tell the difference in somebody's reaction to traveling into the city compared to
So I would say be careful with documenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Find
if you're
another
having
reason.
that,
Right.
if you're having that casual
Right.
conversation,
Sure.
put your pen down.
Larry?
I sent that question to Erica this morning.
Really? That's hilarious.
She sent me someone's resume from Cherry Lodge, Georgia, which is about an hour,
Okay.
a little over an hour away. And I sent her a question, I said, where is she located? You know,
Right.
is she located in Dalton? Because a lot of times I've seen resumes
Right.
with one location, but they have relocated
Sure.
to Dalton area.
Sure, right.
So I sent that question to Erica this morning, so I'm sorry.
Well, my response was, I don't discuss that.
No, but
Right,
that's
but just brings it back to the job. This job requires 8 to 5. We have to be here on time.
Yes.
Our clients, can you do that?
And I think that's key right there. This
Right.
job requires you to be there, the clinic are open this hours, you
Yeah.
know.
And it's not arriving at 8.
right.
Be
You
ready.
need to be ready to go. Right, right.
And you know, and sometimes a lot of these candidates don't exactly know where the clinic is located,
Right.
especially a new clinic. So when it comes to like the Madison clinic, you know, when I'm talking to a candidate and I see they're not in Madison or anywhere close around, you know, we talk about, well, here are the hours the clinic is located off the belt line. It's not too far west, this is where it is, it's right at the, and everybody, most people know where the WPS campus is, you know, and a lot of candidates are like, oh gosh, and then they'll give it up. Oh my gosh, I'm driving whatever right now, like that's gonna be a shorter commute for me, or that's gonna be, you know. So that's what happens.
I assume it is fair game though to say, oh, you're gonna be commuting that far, is that stressful? How do you manage that? From a personal management situations, you take a day and run 8 hours, maybe 9, because you don't get out, and you're talking and several more, there's not a whole lot of time, recovery time before you come back again. So
You
it's
just
fair
have to
game
be
ask-
careful to rule someone out strictly based upon that reason.
Oh.
You can't make that decision like, well, they say they can do it, but I think they can't, so forget it, they're not gonna be considered.
No, it's a matter of, gosh. how do
Right,
you
that's
manage the time?
But you wanna make sure the person thought through it.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Have you been arrested, lawful or unlawful? Why?
What comes through background check? I mean,
Right, an arrest record, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty, right?
Oh, that's
Also,
Get one, yeah.
also I would tell you that leave this stuff to these guys.
Yeah.
We'll handle, or we run background checks on every single hire. It's asked on the application.
Yeah.
If there's a concern, these guys will take care of it, okay? Yep. What languages do you write or speak fluently?
Lawful.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets us up.
It's lawful.
Only if it's job related, you should be asking it.
Right, but sometimes like with MAs, it's helpful, so I think it's okay. Yeah. Would your spouse object if you traveled or worked overtime?
Oh, because we don't know they're married.
Unlawful.
I get the
Ask in a different way, right? You know, maybe, you know, this job requires frequent overtime. Can you do that? Something like that. Again, bring it back to a job. How old are you? Yeah, unlawful. How many days of work did you miss last year? Yeah, right. It's job related.
Is that a good
Yes.
question to ask?
As long as you're careful that they're not talking about any
FMLA,
FMLA or anything
yeah.
like that. So
Right. Yeah, I usually just put that in there. Aside from any approved leaves or whatever, you know, how many days did you miss?
Mhm.
I thought you couldn't ask that because I thought that, like, even when you call for a reference from your previous employer, that they couldn't even give that information.
They can give it to you, but they need to be careful. A lot of places like Quad does not provide any information beyond dates of employment position because it's the safest route, but there's no laws that say somebody can't, but they have to be careful that it's truthful and factual. Otherwise, somebody can sue you for, you know, defaming them, basically.
Since we have such a well-rehearsed HR team doing this, should we just stay away from those questions and let?
Yes.
You guys ask about it.
I would do behavioral things around the job, guys.
We get this stuff.
Yeah, they get the basics for you.
And I guess if we have a concern, we can feed that back to you for any.
Did you ask? What did they say? Right.
Yeah.
Are you a U.S. citizen? Unlawful. Right. Are you eligible to work in the United States? Again, leave those questions to HR, but I'm more just providing the education for you. Do you have any disabilities? Unlawful, right? Exactly. It's more, you know, these are the essential functions of the job. You know, can you do the essential functions with or without reasonable accommodation? Would be the correct way to ask that. Again, leave it to HR. They know, we know how to do this. And if you have a concern, you know, really what you want to do is, like Tom said, the behavioral-based questions. Okay, so you want to avoid any form of discrimination and stick to the job. We talked a lot about that. Don't talk about personal questions or delve into that. The other thing, and this has come up, is please don't make any promises that you can't deliver in your interview. This came up a few times, I think, where we've made, like, one thing that's an absolute no-no is to offer any vacation outside the policy for hourly employees unless you talk to me. Okay, I'm not gonna say we've never made any exceptions, but I don't even have that authority. I have to get Nancy Ott to sign off because it is such a strict policy at Quad. We can make exceptions on the salaried side with work history, but the hourly side, no exceptions. And people have done that before and put it in, like wanted to put it in an offer letter, and they've already made a verbal promise, and that just puts us in a really bad spot.
Only that was normative way back when. I mean, that was, it was so funny comparing where we are now as opposed to when I joined the organization.
Okay, yeah. So, please, and I think there's been some other situations too, but, and the other thing is sometimes, we've had situations where people make promises and they don't tell you. So then, I know we had a situation where you guys went and put an offer letter together, and the candidate was really upset that that information wasn't in the offer letter. So then we look like idiots, right?
Well, it looks like almost a bait and switch, because
Right.
I mean, if you're promising something from even a schedule wise or whatever it may be, make sure you make us aware of it, because if the candidate is expecting in the offer letter, and all
Right.
of a sudden we send an offer letter,
Right,
and it's not there,
right.
they're like, well, what are they trying to do to me here?
And you guys always run the offer letter by the hiring manager.
So,
Right. So you guys see it, read that, that's really important
It's
to read
Lisa
through
reviews
that.
them with the hiring manager. You
Yeah.
used to do them now, but Lisa's doing it.
Lisa's doing them with an HR
You
standard,
see
so read
position.
through that. Yep. And we only do offer letters for salaried folks. We don't do them for hourly. That doesn't mean we can't do them upon request, but we don't do it as a standard, just so everybody knows that. But if you have somebody asking for one, just let Tom and Erica know.
It's only-
Topics
only
to
one
avoid, these are all the topics to avoid, personal, discriminatory. And just, there's a question guide on, how to ask some of these things. Like I said, I'm not gonna go into this in detail, leave these questions up to HR, focus on behavioral-based questions tied to the job. Okay, we're talking about notes for a minute. We are really bad at Quad Med producing interview notes, and that has to change. So I promised these guys that I would harp on this today. When you're doing an interview, first use a set list of questions. Erica's gonna publish hers soon. But then when you're in the interview, take notes. And when it comes down to, you've gotta be able to show in your notes the reason why you didn't hire somebody. So we've had some situations come up where, people have threatened EEOC claims or what have you, and then no notes. Okay, that's not putting the company at a good place from a legal standpoint.
So how long do you keep those notes? Because I take notes, but once I fill the position, I toss out those other notes.
Send them to these guys, we
Yeah,
scan them into the system.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, and I've got lots of notes.
For people we don't hire, we still need the notes. We keep those files for a year, because they have a year to come back and say something. But for people we hire, we keep it for the duration of their employment and then 7 years after they're gone. So we have to keep those records.
Yeah, because, and one time I got an EOC claim like 6 months later, you're not gonna remember if you have any notes. Right?
So this is new, are people turning in notes now?
Some people are, but we're not, but that's why I'm harping on it today, because we're not doing it consistently.
So does that mean as medical directors, we should come up with sort of a core competency questions and then expand on?
Dave already has one. I sent it to you, I think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was like this long.
Oh, okay, well, you can trim it down.
Okay, so that's it, that would be,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
And then when you interview, I just take my notes, and then a lot of times I keep them in a folder till I fill the position, and then I send them all off, and we have scanning people, and they'll scan them in, and it's all good. Okay, you'll be thankful that you have that later, believe me.
Well, it makes sense, I just never thought of it.
Okay, the other thing is not just to take notes, but take good notes and legally defensible notes. So you want to make sure that, you're using evaluative statements, not judgmental statements, okay? And you're reporting factual information and what the candidate said, not what you think about what the candidate said, right? I feel that the candidate would be late every day. Okay, that's great. Nobody cares. It's not legally defensible. The candidate said that they were late 6 times last year. That you should put in your notes, right? So be careful and never write anything like Erica said, discriminatory. Okay, so we're gonna do a behavioral or evaluative. So you know, whether or not are you, is this a behavioral, or an evaluative statement? So the first one I'll give you, demonstrate good communication skills. That's evaluative, right? So evaluative means I'm evaluating that. That's my opinion, that they demonstrated good communication skills. I don't really have anything factual or behavioral to support that statement. Okay? So you can write that, but then write an example. What about rub hands together while talking? Right, that's better, behavioral, what the person specifically did. Attended advanced SPC courses.
Behavioral.
Yep, factual. Conscientious at work. Yeah, that's your opinion, right? Back it up with an example. Stated did not like to work overtime. Motivated worker. Yep, so you guys get the point. Avoid evaluative, or if you do put something, write an example as to why you think that. Okay, I'm not going to skip past that. I think you guys got the idea. Okay, just talk briefly about the process when it comes to hiring, and you guys feel free to chime in here too. When you have an open position, all open positions at Quad Med require VP approval. Okay, so director doesn't count, gotta have a VP approval. So that's Kirk, Blake, or Tim at Quad Med.
It's gotta be documented, so I at least need it in an email, because I have to put it in the system to be able to get it approved through my approval
Written
process.
communication.
Yes.
Yeah, because we need that for SOX compliance. Okay, so you get your written approval, and then you need to go talk to Tom. I think it starts with Tom, and you'll delegate to Erica, right? But then we follow it up with hopefully a face-to-face conversation. I mean, if it's your 10th MA, we probably don't need a face-to-face conversation,
Yeah.
but you know, if it's a new position, then you should have what we call a job launch. And these guys have a form, they're gonna ask you a series of questions, because bottom line, they can't find what you're looking for unless they understand it, right? At Quad Graphics, it's our policy that all positions are posted internally and externally for 3 days before an offer is made. Or I should say, it doesn't have to be posted externally, but at least internally. So for example, if you want to move someone into a new role, you at least have to post internally for 3 days. And that's our, you know, because of our affirmative action obligations. And some of our clients, like City of Wichita Falls, is a public entity, we're required to be an affirmative action employer. So these things are required.
It's also good.
And it's also, I was gonna just say that, it's good business practice because, and it's happened at Quad Med where people haven't followed that and we just plug someone and put them into the job and no one knows about it and it creates really bad morale. Because it's like, well, I didn't even get to throw my name in the hat, right? And you're already fighting a losing argument, okay? Also, all interested candidates have to complete an employment application prior to an interview. You know somebody, great, have them apply, work through these guys. There's questions and process that we have to follow.
We can even send them a direct link to the rec where they need to apply.
Right.
We make it as easy as we can, but we
Right.
have to have them apply online.
I have a question about that.
Huh?
If someone applies and they did, like they, how can I say this? Okay, so if someone applies and they didn't hear anything, now that they go to the website and they see that same position is still open,
Yeah.
do they reapply and submit their application, or how does that work?
They can't reapply to the same position, the system's not set up to let them apply for the same position.
It'll say you've already applied.
Oh, so then what do? They, say it again?
They can't.
They
It doesn't
cannot
allow-
reapply for the same position,
Oh.
the system blocks that.
So if somebody comes to you and says, I applied, I never heard anything, I see this position is still posted,
Yeah.
you probably want to call these guys because
Just
they
send
can
us
look
a-
behind the
Yes,
system and
direction.
see
Oh.
why,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes it happens where it's a mistake or like we were originally requiring 5 years of experience, we relaxed it to 3, you know. I mean, sometimes, but there also could be really good reason as to why you never heard about them.
Right.
So these
So
guys,
when the
all these
person
guys.
applies, And they get, their application honestly gets kicked out, but you know the.
Yes.
Rejected from the branching.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do they get?
notified.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
automatic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what Stephanie's talking about is we have a really great
Yeah.
system that helps us be more efficient. And there's branching questions we can build in. So if it's an MA, you know, how many years of experience do you have? And if we're requiring 5 years and they say I have 3, it's gonna tell you, thank you, but you're not qualified.
And every candidate, or applicant, I should say, every applicant gets that automated email once they apply, you know, letting them know also that we can't contact everyone, because, I mean, one
Right.
rec, I have
That
over
makes
300 applications, so.
Right.
Right. But we do always get back to people that are interviewed.
Right.
But if they just apply and get kicked out, then it's the automatic. Okay?
What if they apply and they don't get an interview, but they don't get kicked out?
Then
Should
you
that-
guys would send a rejection.
Well, what happens is we will go through the evaluation process, we'll review the candidates, we'll pick the people we screen, we'll send on the screen, and let's say they just weren't one of the candidates we were gonna even look at.
So we got an overwhelming
We got
response.
300
Sure.
candidates, and I
Sure.
mean, then if I'm looking for something for Stephanie, I'm looking for clinic experience, I'm looking for phlebotomy, I'm looking for pediatric experience, I'm looking for someone who's had primary care clinic experience, all right? And so we're looking at those. As soon as we fill that job, we get an accepted offer, then we're gonna communicate with everybody who applied to say, the position's been filled, thank you for your interest, we've chosen another qualified candidate.
And it's an email.
Now, it may be a little bit, I mean, you have to understand, that may take a while, okay? And it may take a while,
Because you might interview your first 10 and then have to go to the
Yeah.
next 10, so you
Yeah.
don't want to
So-
tell them too early.
so, but we will, I mean, you know, we don't ever want to reject prematurely, because we may go back to that person, because it may take longer to find that candidate who's gonna accept the job, so it may take
Right.
time.
And the only reason I asked is because, you know, I started in November, and a few weeks ago, I was working at the front desk filling in for the receptionist, and I got a call from a nurse that was wondering if anything had happened with the job that she interviewed for, which was my job. And I just so wanted to say, well, I'm sorry, but I got that job, but I didn't.
You could have said, well, in fact, I do know the position has been filled with other qualified candidates. Myself.
Yeah.
And you guys can send those calls to
You can
these
send them to
guys.
us, I mean, we
And
deal with
they'll
it all the
handle it.
time. I mean, there's also employee services have the, whatever
The job hotline.
the job
yes.
line. They take care of all those calls.
Yeah, we have a great a job hotline in corporate, and it's nowhere like anywhere else I've worked where a live person will answer if you want to check on the status of your application. I mean, a live person answers that. So.
And that's on the website?
Yep, and they take all those calls, and
Yes.
and if then they need our help with anything, then they
Then
give it
they-
to us, but.
Yep. And they put a note in so these guys knows they're checking.
Michelle, question, for those people that go to the website and fill out the form on the Quad Med site, those all come to me saying, you know, I want a job, or I want to be an MA at Shaw, or whatever. I've been forwarding those to you, should I continue to do that, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, is there a way they don't come to, I mean, if it's anything job related, can it not even come to you? Because Blake even gets those.
I know,
We do.
I feel so bad.
Yeah.
We were trying to build into it that it would directly get kicked over to HR, but I don't know that we've been able to do that yet, so they continue to
To
come
the web, to the right website.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we just follow up with them when you send it. I mean, I'm not gonna respond to every one that you send me and say, oh, we'll take care of it.
Yep.
You send it to us, we just take care of it.
Okay,
Yeah, we just say, we point them to right to our website.
Okay,
probably, I would imagine. Okay, and then, you know, these guys do a phone interview, they'll pass along the questions that they asked in the interview notes and say, this is a good person, you should interview them. And then it's important, we have to be really timely because candidates are moving pretty quick when they want a job. So when you get somebody from Tom or Erica to review, it's really imperative that we do our part too and tell them within 48 hours, yes or no. Yes, I'm interested in interviewing them, or no, I'm not, and here's why. And it has to be a job-related reason, not like, this person doesn't look like they'd be a great fit. Okay, we need a documented reason, job-related. So if you can't come up with that, then you probably need to interview them. Okay? Lisa?
Is there a way that, usually when Tom sends me his notes, it's like the highlights of the candidate. Is there a way that we can see exactly what questions you ask?
Yeah, it's right in the system, I can forward it through the system to you if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, because I think we learned a few
Yeah.
weeks ago that
Yeah.
I think we're asking some duplicate questions, and if they're
Yeah, we
asking.
can just work that out, Lisa, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, then, typically these guys will schedule the in-person interview, so if you say yes, okay, then they're gonna schedule a hopefully face-to-face or phone or link or whatever you guys are doing, PC. And then we want to have that interview completed usually within 1 week, so that's the guideline. After you've interviewed, again, notes back to these guys with a documented reason as to why, a job-related reason. If we don't get a good job-related reason, these guys will call you out on it because we need something to document from a legal standpoint. Because if somebody comes and says, I've been discriminated against, it's up to the company to show that we had a job-related reason as to why we didn't hire that person. It's burden of proof on us. Then we talked about decline letters. If somebody's been interviewed, then typically, they'll either get a phone call or some kind of a letter, okay? If you guys have interviewed, and it's a candidate that spent a lot of time with, with the company interviewing, I really suggest a phone call. From you, hopefully, would be nice. If it's someone, you can't do that with every single person, but let's say, you've got a physician that we've wined and dined and we've maybe just decided to hire the one other really good candidate. Take a few minutes because you never know when we're gonna have to call that guy again or that gal, right? Let's say we wanna be an employer of choice. And then references, we do references on all QuadMed hires, 2 references. So we really wanna do those references before the person's offered the position. Sometimes we'll make exceptions for good reasons, but usually you guys run those by me. We don't take that lightly.
Always, we would never do that.
Right. So because it gives you more information. And we always, we try not to just go off of the references they give us. We go into their application and try to pick their last 2 employers.
So I have a question, and maybe you'll go through this, but what if somebody you are supervising or they're reporting to you does leave and uses you as a reference? Do we put that right back on you?
You should forward those to HR. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We typically don't advise that you answer those.
Okay. That's fine.
Oh, they're not supposed to use us as a reference?
They can probably use us
Call
as a
HR.
reference.
We can give
but
out
we
dates
would-
of employment and position, but you personally shouldn't, it's Quad's policy that you personally should not give references for people. Because people sometimes give information that they shouldn't, so it protects the company.
And you say that again.
Typically, it's Quad's policy that if somebody lists you as a personal reference, Dr. Schultz, that you forward that to human resources, typically. I'm gonna look at you as a possible exception because the physician world is so different from anywhere else, but generally, an MA calls, puts you down, send them to HR.
I will tell you that is typical in
Yes.
business, in the last 3 companies. It is the hardest thing I've ever had to not do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't, they're very specific. When talking about the guys, you say, clinical situations, what do you
Right.
do this, that,
At least let us know, Dennis, that you're
Oh, I
getting
can send them to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to say,
Yeah.
okay, I don't do
Yeah.
this, send them away.
it. Right, the physician world is a little different, but for the rest of us, generally send them to HR.
So what about letters of recommendation for interns or students?
Those should come through HR too. If you're gonna write it, then at least we should be looking at it, putting a copy in their file.
Oh, that's fair, so you can do that.
You can do that, but I wanna see it, or Lisa, somebody, because we need to make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in there. Okay,
That would also go then for all the other docs, because I mean, in our world, you get,
that's what I'm saying, physicians is a little different, but when you write one, you just have to be careful, you're really factual.
but I mean, we can do that, we just need to get the word out to
Yes.
everybody.
Yes. If you can help me with that, because you're regional medical director.
I have one more question. Okay, so when we're taking notes and we're down to the 2 final candidates, they both have, answered questions great. They're both, would be great for the position, and you just know that one would be better for the clientele that you have. You know, I had that with Sweets. I had one lady that was she would have been
Yep.
great, except I just knew she wouldn't gel with the clients
Why?
as well. She wasn't smiley, she wasn't bubbly, she
You
just
have reasons.
Okay, because that seems more like a behavioral, like,
She wasn't as, she didn't seem as approachable, but then you should ask yourself, why did I think that?
right.
And if you keep asking yourself that, you're gonna come back to
Okay.
a behavioral-based reason for not.
Okay.
She didn't smile as much as the other candidate. She, didn't seem as approachable because she answered the question this way and the other candidate asked this
Okay.
way.
Okay.
You just have to,
I think you get down to those two final candidates and you're like, okay,
and
well.
you can say, this person was my runner-up, but this is why. You gotta have a job-related reason. Okay, internal candidates, we mess this up all the time, so I'm gonna make mention of this. It hurts a lot of feelings, so. So when internal candidates, apply for another position at QuadMed, an MA is working at one clinic and they apply to work at a different clinic. For example, we have an internal transfer confidentiality policy, meaning that MA can go and apply at another clinic and they don't have to tell you as their manager. That's okay. The reason we do that is because we want to promote internal opportunities. We don't want somebody to be scared to apply because they don't want their manager to find out and hurt their feelings, right? But before we offer the position, we need to make sure that the two managers have talked. So generally, it would work something like this. Lauren, you're my final candidate for this role. Before I offer you the position though, or before I would move forward, I need to talk to your current manager. So do you want to go talk to your manager first and let them know I'm calling, or should I just reach out? Then I follow her direction. If she wants to tell the manager herself, great. Otherwise, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to say something like, Tina, Lauren's applied for my role. She's been working for you for 2 years. Haven't offered it, but I want to know what you think. Is there anything not in the personnel file?
I'm sorry, please come shop.
Right. I'm internal to QuadMed though, so you can share information with me.
Okay.
Right. So is there anything that I should know about? Just so you know, I would certainly work with you on a transfer date and those kind of things. But I want to consult you first as a fellow QuadMed manager before I would move forward. Okay? So important.
Does that work with Quad Graphics too? Quad Graphics employees?
Yep. And then, once you've gotten that, then we can offer the position. Always it happens the reverse though, because people just offer and then they go and tell their current, and the manager gets really hurt, like, why didn't somebody just call me, right? And this has happened recently, so I know I'm getting some knowing looks, but you know what I'm talking about. So avoid this at all costs.
Can the other manager shut it down?
Can the other manager shut it down? That's a good question. I would say it depends. It depends upon what information, right? So I have had situations where the manager's like, by moving this employee out, it's going to put it's going to put the business in an extreme position. Those kind of situations usually get raised to the VP level for a decision because it's a crapshoot because you don't want to shut down the person either, and then they leave the company. You'd rather stay within QuadMed. Or another scenario might be that they give you really good information. Maybe their last performance eval, I forgot to send it to HR, and there's a bunch of information in there. Okay, that could happen. Then yeah, we could shut it down. If it's just my feeling and preference, and I don't want to be inconvenienced, then no, HR will step in.
So does QuadMed, Quad Graphics have a policy where if a candidate is on a performance improvement plan that they cannot apply for another position?
That's a really good question. We haven't been that legalistic about it. However, generally, I think production follows like 3 months. Like if you got a written warning in the last 3 months. We try to leave it a little bit more gray, but I recommend that you follow that. So if you're like, I'm the hiring manager for my position, I don't want anybody written up in the last 3 to 6 months. It's a good rule of thumb.
And then one follow-up question,
Yep.
so that is, I just lost it. Oh, come on.
The silence doesn't bother me. It'll come back. Okay. External candidates, remember, it's is you gotta sell. Don't go in with the attitude like, the candidate has to beg for the job.
I remember. So do we have a policy that if I start
Right.
and I am here a month and I see another job opening, do we have something that says you have to be in this position for 6 months before you can transfer it?
We don't. Again, HR at Quad generally, we try to be, not have a million rules, because that's just our culture. You'll find that we don't have a lot of black and white rules. But again, you can say that's your policy for your position, and I think it's a wise policy to follow, but it's not like it's in the employee guidelines.
Okay.
Right?
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so we want to sell. One thing, and these guys have good tools how to do that. We have a tool called a hidden paycheck, where you can plunk in what you're going to offer the position or the candidate, and then it tells you like your total compensation with the benefits, because benefits cost a lot of money, as we know, we're in the healthcare field. And so it can show like their total compensation, and that can be used to kind of hopefully push the candidate over the edge. I know that, benefits information, we have split sheets that detail all the benefits. Those should be being shared at the time of offer. And then, selling the candidate on all the good things of working at Quad.
So I have a question. I know we had a couple of times talked about when we're going through our budget, and we're saying this is how much we can offer somebody. The offer number that we have, or the amount that we will pay that person that I had originally included benefits. So if I was offering, it came back that really I could only offer 70, but it was in my budget for 90. So that was a little bit of a gray area for me, because when I put it in my budget, is that including benefits in that 90,000? Or should we be putting it in at 70,000? And
I don't know, but you should be clear. I don't get to the point of how it's all budgeted.
Because that happens.
But you need to ask that question. So, there's a salary number, and then typically we add 30% for the benefits cost.
This is a new role outside of our standard process, so Robin and her team would normally.
So ask
make that
Robin.
Right, because I know that Tom and I kind of went by the higher number because we weren't under the impression that it included benefits.
It's not a bad question to ask. Is this with benefits? Is it without? And where we get that, where the budgeted number comes from, we do market studies. Okay, so but sometimes we find that there will be a microcosm of the market and it's wrong. So you can't go off of that 100%. Always, it's not always effective. But generally, let's just say from a nationwide standpoint, an MA makes 13 to 16 an hour, okay? Then what we do is we say, okay, in Boise, Idaho, typically it's 90% of the U.S. market is what the standard of living is in Boise. So we take 90% of that $13 to $16 an hour, and so your range would be, I don't know, $12.50 to $15.50. So that's generally the science but sometimes you'll run into, this happens on the physician side all the time, Dr. Schultz, where, it's like, northern Wisconsin where the cost of living is really low, but nobody wants to go up there from a physician standpoint, so you actually have to pay more.
Right.
So sometimes we miss things that we put in an RFP. So again, come talk to us.
So if you run into that situation, what then becomes the next step on your side?
Typically what we can do is we can do a customized customized compensation study for that area, for that position, but it costs like $300. Or we say, we talked to enough candidates, we know we're wrong, we're adjusting.
Or there has to be a conversation
With the client, thank you, David. Yes,
That's
because
what
we've already
happens.
told the client.
That's what happens more often than not for me is I'll say, okay, Dave, we found this client, they cost this much, plus they have relocation, plus they have an agency fee.
Right, and that's where I think we're learning more. We've underpriced certain things like Robin talked about yesterday, and now that we've done it more, we can kind of know more, so it's kind of the growing pains.
But that also goes back to never make the offer until Michelle and everybody gives a thumbs up, because we have those issues to work through.
Right. Yes, you should be always consulting HR because we have that information.
question, but so how does the client company get involved with making decisions about hiring one?
That's a
person
really good
versus
question.
another?
Yep. Most of our client companies want to interview positions. Some of them say, for the MAs, you decide. But if they want to be involved in the interview, we do allow that.
Here's how we present it, and Sarah's not here, during the implementation process and the sales process up front, we tell them that they can be involved in as much or as little as they would like. However, we typically recommend the top 2 or 3 positions. So at Shaw, I believe there were 3, maybe 4 of the 18 that we let them interview.
Like the provider.
actively. But at a 3-person, it may just be the lead provider.
Right.
And then when you
How
meet with
how
them,
often do they say no?
Very seldom.
Oh,
But once in a
They wanna be
while.
It depends on the client, I'm sure. In fact, I know.
Tina, do you know of anywhere they said no? They didn't want to?
If they didn't want to interview?
Yeah, I can't think of any.
But yeah, Stephanie, and I guess just one quick thought too, we're still responsible for what the client's asking too, so, if I don't wanna generally go in assuming that they don't know how to interview, but if you're seeing red flags, we need to deal with that, we can't just ignore it.
Well, here's an example. I mean,
Yeah.
we sent a mid-level in for Rexnord recently, and the HR person, and well, a couple things too, but Rexnord recently, and Eric, the HR person from Rexnord, had sent us an email saying, well, obviously we're gonna interview for fit, but do you have any questions for us novices who need to ask questions for mid-level providers? And I basically sent back to immediately to Tina and Stephanie and said, well, wait a minute, they don't need to do that. We've done all that before. They just need to see, does this person fit in their culture?
Right, but we
So-
still need a job-related reason.
But
for our
yeah,
client.
so anyway, what we did is we just responded back to Eric and just said, just focus on, will this person fit your culture?
Fit the culture,
You
and
don't-
if not, why?
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about asking them mid-level
Are they
specific
qualified?
questions.
So here's another example.
Yeah.
We had a client that had 2 providers and they wanted to make sure one was male and one was female.
Right.
Yeah, can't interview that way. But we got HR involved and actually it turned out just fine, but those are sticky.
Or we have an
Call
interview.
HR.
Or we have an interview
Situations.
where the ConAgra interviewed the oversight physician, and with physicians, you can go on the internet and find out just about anything you want about a physician,
Yeah, this was a good one.
okay? And they found one out of multiple reviews on the physician that was very negative, and that's what he's hanging his hat on right now. And really, it's not legally defensible that we would be able to turn this person down for this. So we're in a position right now, so we're keeping this physician warm because she's really good. We're just gonna have to,
Yes,
Work
work
through
through
it.
Tom and Erica, Noah's me, those are hopefully the exception, but yes, they happen. Okay, and then when you make your offer, I like that, well, I know sometimes you guys like to make the offer, Tom and Erica, because you can kind of be that middle person, and from a negotiation standpoint, the person probably is gonna be more willing to say, oh, I really wanted $1 an hour more, and these guys can work through that. If you ended up being the person to make the offer, because that's something that you want to do, the only thing I would say is, just say, once you, agree to the offer and the person's accepted, Erica or Tom will reach out on pre-employment processes. Don't ever mention the word drug screen, okay? Because we typically do not mention that word until we know that the candidate can come within the next 24 hours, okay? Or background check or all that, leave that up to HR. And then the other thing I would say is once your candidate's accepted the job, a lot of times we have long lead times where the clinic's not opening for a while. You're not done. You have to stay in contact with your candidate, right? Because so oftentimes, then weeks go on and they haven't heard from you, and then they start to second guess themselves and lose interest and go find another job. And we're seeing that with Shaw. That's happened to us a few times now. So please stay in regular contact with them. And it's, on the physician side, I'll say, it's so critical because we've lost people that just decide they get cold feet and they don't want to relocate, right? So keep in contact with your person. Okay. Any other questions before we take a quick break? Sexual harassment next, and we'll go quick. Yeah, Sherry.
I just